Hello, everybody. Welcome back today. Let's see. I am working on some 3D prints. Why is it not hiding my taskbar? Oh, what that is. No. That's not it. Where's the taskbar? Whatever. Let's play some music. this one's pretty hollow. I think I'm going to choose another book. Let's see. Yeah, how about this?
Cal Jericho, Sinner's Bounty, by Josh Reynolds. Read by Mark Elstock. In order to even begin to understand the blasted world of Necromunda, you must first understand the hive cities. These man-made mountains of plasteel, ceramite, and
Stay
rockweed
hydrated.
have
Drink some
accreted over
water.
centuries to protect their inhabitants from a hostile environment, so very much like the termite mounds they resemble. The Necromundan hive cities have populations in the billions and are intensely industrialized, each one commanding the manufacturing potential of an entire planet or colony system compacted into a few hundred square kilometers. The internal stratification of the hive cities is also illuminating to observe. The entire hive structure replicates the social status of its inhabitants in a vertical plane. At the top are the nobility, below them are the workers, and below the workers are the dregs of society, the outcasts. Hive Primus, seat of the planetary governor, Lord Helmore of Necromunda, illustrates this in the starkest terms. The nobles, houses Helmore, Catalus, Tai, Ulanti, Grime, Ranlow, and Co-Iron, live in the spire and seldom set foot below the wall that exists between themselves and the great forges and hab zones of the hive city proper. Below the hive city is the underhive, foundation layers of habitation domes, industrial zones, and tunnels which have been abandoned in prior generations only to be reoccupied by those with nowhere else to go. But humans are not insects. They do not hive together well. Necessity may force it, but the hive cities of Necromunda remain internally divided to the point of brutalization and outright violence being an everyday fact of life. The underhive, meanwhile, is a thoroughly lawless place, beset by gangs and renegades, where only the strongest or the most cunning survive. The Goliaths, who believe firmly that might is right, the matriarchal, man-hating Escher, the industrial Orlocks, the technologically minded Van Saar, the Delac, whose very existence depends on their espionage network, the fiery zealots of the Cawdor. all striving for the advantage that will elevate them, no matter how briefly, above the other houses and gangs of the underhive. Most fascinating of all is when individuals attempt to cross the monumental physical and social divides of the hive to start new lives. Given social conditions, ascension through the hive is nigh on impossible, but descent is an altogether easier, albeit altogether less appealing, possibility. Excerpted from Zonariarius the Younger's Nobilite Pax Imperator, The Triumph of Aristocracy over Democracy. Prologue. Desolation. "It's coming," Dozeman said. Fenks stirred. He blinked and stretched, swinging his legs down from the chunk of broken ferrocrete, making sure to cradle his las rifle close to his chest. The weapon was the most valuable thing he owned, and worth more than his life, or Dozeman's life, anyway. "You certain this time?" he asked, inhaling a lungful of stale air. His yawn turned into a cough. The air had been recycled 1,000,000 times, but still tasted as foul as the day it had gusted up from some forgotten vent. He looked up. Dozeman was perched halfway up the pipes, his auto gun braced across his thighs. Like most scummers, Dozeman was skinny from too many missed meals and yellow from too much rot gut. Fenks knew he didn't look much better, but at least the old Defence Force uniform he wore under his armour was clean. Dozeman wore his clothes until they rotted off. "Because you said the same thing over an hour ago." "I'm sure. Listen." Fenks did. A low grinding sound permeated the ancient transit tunnel. It sounded close, but a lifetime in the cramped confines of the underhive had taught him better than to believe his ears. He dropped to his haunches and pressed a calloused palm to the cracked surface of the ground. Dozeman looked down at him. "What are you doing?" "Feeling the vibrations. Old rat skin trick." "You're not a rat skin." "Don't have to be a rat skin to pick up some tricks," Fenks said defensively. "Now be quiet. I'm listening." "To the vibrations?" "Right." Dozeman snorted. Fenks ignored him with an ease born of experience. He'd partnered with Dozeman often enough to know how to tune him out. It took focus to be a good gunman, which Fenks liked to think he was. You had to be able to ignore anything that didn't help you hit your mark. Granted, that was easier said than done most days. "Anything yet?" Dozeman called down. "I thought I told you to be quiet." "I'm bored." "Then maybe you should have stayed in rickety splits with the rest of the trash and left this to the actual gunners," Fenks snapped, not looking at him. Rickety Splits was the closest settlement, a day out as the Sheen bird flew, and 10 pipes west of Girder City. It wasn't much of anything. A candle in the dark, as a corridor of his acquaintance liked to say. A candle that was half melted, with a bent wick and a funny smell coming from it. It was the sort of place that attracted scummers like Dozeman, and Fenks, though he didn't like to admit it. Out of reach of the enforcers, ignored by the guilders, save when they needed warm bodies, like now. Fenks frowned. He didn't mind working for the guilders, normally. Caravan jobs or archaeotech digs were easy money, but this was different. He could feel it in his marrow. What he couldn't feel was so much as a twitch beneath his hand. No vibrations, no twitch of loose stone. But that didn't mean anything. The transit tunnels were reinforced for industrial and military haulage. When Hive Primus finally collapsed under its own weight, the tunnels would still be there, and whatever was living in them. The thought made him glance around nervously. The tunnel was a long, lightless stretch of industrial decline. It had been built generations before Fenks' ancestors had even drawn breath, and had been forgotten for longer than he could remember. There were thousands just like it stretching through the dark at world's bottom. This one had seen better centuries, in Fenks' opinion. The pipes that followed the curve of the roof and walls had mostly rusted through, disgorging their contents on the stone below. Old spillages had eaten craters in the ground and become makeshift lagoons of greenish water and softly twitching fungal grasses. Support pillars slumped like fallen trees, and broken statues occupied the spaces between. The weight of the levels above, forever pressing down, had driven great cracks through the walls, rupturing the ferrocrete and causing the ground to buckle in places. Where once there had been weighing stations and vox points, there were now caves, and in those caves— "Thanks!" Fenks jumped. He glared up at Dozeman. "What?" "Hasp wants to know what you're doing." "Then she can ask me herself," Fenks snarled. He pushed himself to his feet, annoyed at how easily he'd been startled. It was being out here that did it. A man wasn't meant for the wilds. The bad zones between settlements were hungry places where folk vanished all the time, and the tunnels especially so. Even the rat skins avoided them. He looked around. "Where is she, anyway?" "Right here." Fenks jumped again and spun, a curse on his lips. Hasp tapped her own. "Quiet, scummer. Sound carries out here." She was short and stout, and he thought she had some rat skin in her. Something about the eyes. Too close together and too dark. Like him, she was wearing cast-off military gear and carrying a refurbished las rifle scavenged from some downhive bazaar. "Bogdan wants to know what you're doing," she added. Fenks grimaced. Bogdan was nominally in charge and had deep pockets. That wasn't surprising, given that he worked for the Guilders. He'd splashed his cash around rickety splits and hired 24 of the most desperate gunners this side of Steelgate. Fenks knew some of them. Besides Dozeman and Hasp, there was Andre Winks and the 2-credit kid, Dupes Finn and the Kettle brothers, even Long Sally Shakes. As motley a crew as ever was hired, all scattered across the tunnel. A part of him doubted it would be enough.
What's he doing?
A deep, bull voice bellowed. Bogdan. He was somewhere back amid the rubble field. "He hasn't said," Hasp shouted back. She looked at Fenks. "Well?" "He's feeling the vibrations," Dozeman called down. Hasp looked up at him. "What?" "Rat skin trick," Dozeman shouted. She stared up at him a moment longer and then looked at Fenks. "What?" "I'm trying to see if he's getting close." "By fondling the ground?" Fenks's reply was interrupted by the sound of someone heavy clambering through the rubble. Bogdan stepped past a fallen statue, his shotgun braced across his broad shoulders. Bogdan still wore Orlok colours, though he hadn't fought for his clan house in close to a decade. Bogdan's only loyalty was to the almighty credit.
What is he doing?
"Rat skin magic," Hasp said. Bogdan blinked.
You're a rat skin?
"No."
Then why are you doing magic?
Fenks groaned. "I was checking for vibrations."
Why?
"To see if they were close." Bogdan squinted at him.
We can hear them. I sent the 2-credit kid and Bluff Cantor up to the northern shaft to give us early warning.
"Cantor is half blind and the kid can't find his arse with both hands." Bogdan laughed.
Maybe I should have had them
All right. So the GK3 Ultra is what I have, and due to me getting the Kickstarter backer, early bird special, they only have it in G2 Prox Pro, and I get 1 year of it for free. And the only downside with it right now is I'm about to make a YouTube video about it. Is that the reusable cartridges, you can only reuse them a max of like 14 times because if you don't seal it right or something, they leak. So I'm gonna make a YouTube video about how to the issue with it, how to take it apart and clean it properly, and also that it's a weird design flaw that the bottles leak is one, and that the I don't know the face of it that can't go down if you're holding your prints to the side, you can't shut the case, so all that the vapors are still getting out of the room. So really, there's three because you have to use Cheetahbox Pro if you're using Cheetahbox of any kind. There's the leak with the reusable cartridges, and the like um, you can't close it. You know, whatever. Sorry, I have hiccups. I'm not talking much. Also, my wire for my headphones, I rolled over with my chair and it's broken. So I'll talk when I can. Uh, when I'm not, I'm just gonna be playing audiobooks and setting up this 3D print. If you have any questions or want anything, just say so. I'll read chat when I can. Thank you for joining me today.
Talk to the hive spirits, huh?
Fangs bit back a retort. It would be a waste of breath. Bogdan shook his head and continued.
I'm not paying you to pat the ground, Finks. I'm paying you to waylay and kill a man. Think you can focus, maybe?
I heard he wasn't a man at all, Dozeman called down. Bogdan looked up.
Who?
Desolation Zune! The name hit the air like a gunshot. Everyone fell silent, just for a moment. Desolation Zune had that effect on people. Hasp looked up. And what is he then, a witch? A sumpgeist? Dozeman shrugged. Maybe. The Redemptionists aren't witches, Fanks said. The others looked at him. What? They're not. There are a lot of things, the Red Rose, but witches isn't one of them. Bogdan sniffed and spat.
He's a man, a stupid man. Only a stupid man would rob a Gilder tithe house.
From the sound of it, he was pretty smart about being stupid, Fanks said. Bogdan glared at him.
And what would you know about it, scummer?
I know we ain't the only ones after him. Bogdan poked him in the chest with a thick finger.
Well, we're the ones who are going to catch him.
He looked around.
You hear me?
Fanks shook his head. How do we even know he's coming this way? That sound could be anything.
I have it on good authority,
Bogdan said.
Now, get ready, because once that crazy scavo shows up, we're going to have a fight on our hands.
Fanks looked at Hasp. She was frowning. Fanks knew how she felt. Desolation Zune wasn't just some scummer on the prod. He was a legend, and a nasty one. A mad, bad redemptionist of the fire and promethium variety, who'd burned witches, heretics, and at least one scummer who'd looked at him funny. He was also a thief, according to the Guilders. The way Fanks had heard it, Zune had crashed an ore hauler through the doors of a Gilder tithe house in Steelgate and emptied the building of everything of value. That was pure brass, even for a redemptionist. The Guilders had been impressed enough to drop a bounty in excess of several thousand credits for Zune's head, attached to his body or otherwise. Now every scummer with a gun and a need for credits was on the hunt, chasing down even the smallest whiff of Zune. Some, like Bogdan, had decided to play it smart. The former Orlok was hoping numbers and surprise might prove a winning combination. Fanks had his doubts, but he knew better than to voice them, especially where Bogdan could hear him. A sharp whistle sounded through the tunnel. Fanks and the others turned. He saw the slim, dark-clad form of the two-credit kid racing towards them. "It's coming! It's coming!" he shouted, drawing his auto-pistols as he ran. Fanks felt it then. The ground shook beneath his feet. Bogdan grinned.
Back to your positions, scummers. Time to collect some credits.
Hasp and Bogdan clambered out of sight. Dozeman crawled higher into the canopy of pipes back to his shooter's nest. Fanks and the kid took cover behind a fallen support pillar. The kid was breathing heavy. Whether excited or scared, Fanks couldn't tell. The kid was young and unscarred. He was fresh from Hive City, or so Fanks had heard. He fancied himself a master gunner, and had killed a fair few fools since coming down Hive. Mostly, he got them drunk, baited them into showdowns, and then looted and sold the bodies for corpse starch. This was a different sort of game entirely. "Where's Cantor?" he asked. The kid shrugged. "He was behind me. What do we do? When they get here, I mean." Fanks lifted his rifle and shrugged. "Shoot them." "What if they don't stop?" "Keep shooting them." Debris fell from above. It pattered down softly at first, and then in great chunks, as ancient stone buckled and snapped beneath industrial treads. The sound echoed like thunder through the ancient transit tunnel, and the reverberations of the machines passing shook centuries of dust from the rusted gantries overhead. "Sounds big," the kid said. "The bigger they are," Fanks muttered. The plan was a simple one. Crack mines had been scattered across the tunnel. Bogdan swore they were still functional, even if they were close to a century old. Once the ore hauler struck a mine, it'd stop. Hopefully it'd do more than that, but looking at it, Fanks wasn't optimistic. Once it was no longer moving, they'd hit it with everything they had. But as the ore hauler came into sight, Fanks' breath caught in his throat. It was a brute of a machine. A marvel of function over form. Its broad wedge-shaped hull was capable of breaching the debris slides that often blocked the older tunnels, and what it couldn't smash through, its treads could carry it over. "Emperor's teeth," he muttered. A normal ore hauler was an imposing prospect. This one might as well have been a battle tank. Heavy plates of furnace iron had been welded to the hull, reinforcing its frame. Lines of scripture had been etched into these armor plates by heat and acid. Tool blisters had been replaced with stub cannon mounts, and archaic vox casters had been attached to the canopy. A constant stream of prayers and hymns echoed from these, heralding the vehicle's coming to any who might be listening. "Why are they screaming?" the kid asked, eyes squeezed shut. "It's singing," Fanks said between gritted teeth. "What they call singing." Vents along its dorsal canopy spewed black smoke as auger nodes oscillated, scanning its immediate area. Normally, those sensors would be keyed to potential avalanches, cave-ins, and deadfalls, but at the moment they were doubtless seeking more immediate threats, hidden among the pipes and crumbling entry hatches that ran to either side of the tunnel. Fanks knew it was impossible, but he could swear that he felt one of the scans wash across him. He flinched back. The kid glanced at him. "Scared?" he asked, grinning. "You would be too if you had any sense," Fanks growled. "Keep your head down. They're almost where we want them." But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't going to work. He felt it in his gut. He cast a surreptitious glance around, hunting for the closest escape route. If things went wrong, he intended to run. Bogdan and his credits be damned. The great machine slowed as it passed through a crumbling archway. Statues raised in honor of the now forgotten first colonists of Necromunda cracked and fell from their busted plinths, filling the air with dust. Indistinct winged shapes took flight, arrowing away into the darkness. Their shrieks were drowned out by the subsequent explosion. The ore hauler rocked on its treads, suspension creaking. Smoke boiled up out from under it as it shuddered to a stop. The vox casters clicked off mid-prayer. A taut silence descended on the tunnel. Fanks lifted his rifle and sighted down the barrel. "Now?" the kid muttered. "Wait for Bogdan to give the word," Fanks hissed. The moment stretched. Then, as he'd suspected, it all went wrong. "What's that sound?" the kid asked. Fanks' eyes widened as he heard the high, thin whir of stub cannons cycling up. The guns twitched and spat fire. Bullets chewed the surrounding stone and metal, filling the air with shrapnel. Shouts and screams followed as bodies fell from hidden blinds or toppled from shooting nests. Fanks heard a bad sound close by, and that was it for the two-credit kid. He scrambled for cover as what was left of the kid's body collapsed. It was over in moments. When it was done, the vox-casters blared to life once more, filling the air with a hymn of thanksgiving. The ore-hauler rumbled into motion and dragged itself forwards, leaking oil and smoke, but still functional. Fenks watched it all from where he huddled against a broken pipe. Blood pumped from the ragged wounds in his legs and shoulder. He could hear groaning and praying nearby. Someone, Dozeman, he thought, was screaming. Fenks slid down, the world going black. He felt the ground tremble as the ore-hauler and its cargo vanished deeper into the underhive. As he passed out, his last thought was that maybe Dozeman had been right after all. Desolation Zune was a monster. Chapter 1. Back in the Sump. "Oh, scav!" Cal Jericho was already dropping into a crouch as the exclamation left his mouth. The axe was little more than a rusty fan blade lashed to a length of bone, and it cut the air with a thin whistle. With no cowl to stop it, the makeshift weapon continued its arc unimpeded, burying itself in a steam pipe. A boiling fug gushed, filling the causeway corridor. Cal cursed again and fired one of his las pistols in the general direction of the axe-wielding mutie. He threw himself aside as a second cannibal erupted from a side corridor opposite him, autogun blazing. The newcomer wasn't aiming, just shooting. A fine old underhive tradition. Fill the air with enough lead, you were bound to hit something. "Scabs!" Cal snarled. Then, "Yolanda!" The only answer he received was more shooting. No sign of his partners anywhere. Slugs perforated support struts, and the causeway gave an audible groan. It only remained aloft thanks to centuries of rust and a bit of luck. Cal shoved himself across the floor, returning fire with more enthusiasm than accuracy. No time to worry about where the others were now, not when he could hear the whoops and howls of his attackers as they raced up creaking gantry stairs or shimmied down through broken transit shafts. He needed to be elsewhere, and quickly. The fug began to thin, leaving a greasy residue on the air. The mutie with the axe was down, having caught a slug, meant for Cal, but the other one was still standing, curses dripping from his blistered lips as he struggled to clear a jam in the autogun's firing chamber. Cal rose to his feet, las pistol extended. The mutie froze, staring. Cal winked and shot him. A moment later he was running down the causeway, the rest of the cannibals in pursuit. Cal fired in his wake without looking. At worst, the volley would slow the fastest ones down. At best, he might kill one or two, and the rest would stop to eat them. The causeway was a long stretch of rusty iron and sodden ferrocrete, one of a dozen extending across the upper reaches of the ruined Hab Dome. Phosphorescent flora climbed the struts and girders that held the causeway in place, and slow drifts of glimmering pollen hung heavy on the air. The causeway was crumbling in places. Wide gaps made the path treacherous, but Cal was an old hand at running for his life in difficult terrain. Even so, he was soon forced to holster his weapons. He needed his hands free to haul his lean frame along the more unstable sections of the causeway. But however cautious he was, he didn't slacken his pace. The muties were hot on his heels, and they were hungry by the sounds of it. Then, they were always hungry. Of course, they also weren't supposed to be this far south of Pipefall. Even as he ran, he wondered what had drawn them to this bad zone. If the mutie tribes were moving south, that meant they were heading up from Hive Bottom, and that was bad for everyone. Bad, but also profitable. Mutie scalps were worth 5 credits apiece in Steelgate. Too bad there was no time to stop and collect a few. He bounded over a chunk of rubble, his sword clanking against his legs, and saw that the path fell away into darkness ahead. Without slowing, he holstered his las pistols and darted out across a broken girder that extended partially over the gap. A tumble of torn hoses and conduits dangled over the empty space, and as he reached the end of the girder, he leapt. His intention, formed in the half-second before his leap, was to swing across the gap and land adroitly on the opposite side. Unfortunately, his weight pulled many of the artificial vines loose from their corroded housings. He found himself clinging desperately to a single length of electrical conduit, his momentum lost in his momentary flailing. As he swung out over the gap, he glimpsed a forest of glowing flora below and the polluted streams cutting through it. The lower levels of the habdome had collapsed under the weight of strange growths, and he could smell the sickly sweet stink of toxic fumes. He heard a giggle and saw that the muties had caught up with him. They stared at him from the edge of the gap, eyeing him the way a rat eyed a hunk of meat. At least a dozen, maybe more. Starveling, thin, or bloated with cancerous tumours, they shifted and murmured, following him with their eyes as he swung gently from side to side. A few might have been licking their lips, but it was hard to tell, given the malformation of their faces. One of them looked down, picked up a length of pipe and jabbed at him. "Stop it!" Cal said, kicking ineffectually at the pipe. The effort sent him in a slow circle. This seemed to amuse them, and more jabbing followed until he managed to kick the pipe out of the mutie's grip. It clattered away into the dark below. They watched it fall and then looked back up at him. Cal stared back at them. Muties were the worst of the worst. The flotsam and jetsam of hive bottom scraped out and churned up. Inbred, gripped by disease and malnutrition, they murdered, robbed, and ate anyone they could catch. In Cal's professional opinion, life in the underhive would have been vastly improved if every mutie was dead and their corpses safely incinerated. Nonetheless, he tried an ingratiating smile. "So, what's the cost of safe passage these days? I'm all out of credits, but I'm always up for a bit of bartering."
"Nice boots,"
one of them grunted.
"nice coat."
Another wheezed.
"Looks like he tastes nice too."
A third said, smacking her lips in a manner that was decidedly not lascivious. Heads nodded and grunts of assent followed this assertion. Cal shook his head. "I warn you, I'm fairly certain I'm mostly gristle."
"Soft,"
a mutie crooned.
"soft uphiver, smells so sweet."
Cal began to regret taking his weekly bath so recently. It was just that a man wanted to look his best before going on a job. He had a reputation to maintain after all. He was glad there was no one to witness him dangling here. At the thought, he looked around, hoping to spot the familiar forms of his partners. They'd got separated when the muties had sprung their ambush. It was every man or woman for themselves in such situations, and Scabs and Yolanda were experienced enough to look after themselves. Unfortunately, the muties had followed Cal rather than the others. "Go find Scabs," he said. "He's slow, and I'm sure that unsightly dermatitis of his will make him easy to chew." The muties, unfortunately, didn't seem inclined to follow his advice. "No one ever listens to me," Cal muttered, as he spun slowly around and around. "I'm doomed to be unappreciated in my own time. Or eaten. Or both." He looked down, trying to gauge the distance to the bottom of the hab, or even just to the glowing canopy of flora, but it was too far even for someone with his luck. He looked up. The conduit wasn't going to hold forever. There was no telling if it would last long enough for him to try and climb it. He was stuck good and proper. "I admit this is not a good day for the Underhive's greatest bounty hunter," he said out loud. A mutie laughed, and Cal made an obscene gesture. "Who asked you, you blister-faced sump rat?" One of them tossed a chunk of stone at him, and he drew a las pistol. Those closest drew back. Others levelled their own weapons. "Not the wisest option," Cal called out. "Shoot me, and that's your dinner gone." He gestured downwards meaningfully. "Wouldn't want that, would you?" The muties paused. Jaundiced gazes flickered back and forth, and they began to murmur among themselves. It soon took a heated turn. An exchange of blows swiftly followed. They were clearly at odds over the best course of action. Cal used the opportunity to take stock of his surroundings. Experience had taught him that there was always a way out if you had the wit to see it. He twisted about, looking for anything that might be of help. The causeways stretched like a web of ferrocrete across the upper reaches of the dome. After centuries of neglect, toxic rains and hive quakes, most were little more than sections of skeletal struts and support beams. The cavernous slopes of the dome's interior were a latticework of rotting walkways and abandoned transit shafts. Thousands of pipes jutted from among the ferrous escarpments, spilling sump water down into the dark below. Hot slurry gushed ceaselessly through broken aqueducts, joining the rest of the spillage in torrential rivers of chemical toxicity. In the distance, hidden by the steamy fog that rose from those slurry rivers, ancient mechanisms the size of battleships loomed like mountains of rusting slag. He'd heard stories to the effect that muti tribes sometimes worshipped the primeval machines, but he'd never seen any evidence of it. "Picturesque but unhelpful in the short term," Cal muttered as he blew a blonde plait out of his face and turned his attentions to his immediate surroundings. As he'd expected, no sign of Scabs or Yolanda. Not even any sign of Wotan, his loyal cyber-mastiff. Then something had been a bit off about Wotan since he'd got his sprockets jangled during the thing. The last time Cal had had the bad fortune to journey spirewards. Thinking about the thing made Cal even more desperate to escape. "You've been in worse situations, man," he said out loud. "I mean, is this honestly worse than being married to Yolanda Catalyst?" Yolanda was an ideal partner in crime most of the time, but as a partner in matrimony? He felt a shudder run through him at the thought. Yolanda was beautiful in the same way that a fear cat was beautiful. All the colours and general slinkiness hid a murderous temper. He'd once seen her beat a man to death with another slightly smaller man. Then there were all the times she'd tried to kill him, either to collect one of the occasional bounties on his head, or just because she'd been in a bad mood at the time. And yet there was something about her. A gutter sheets poet of his acquaintance had once described her as Our Lady of the Underhive, in an ode to her fierce beauty. The poet had claimed that Yolanda was the Underhive manifest, all its good points and bad wrapped up in one tattooed package. Of course, when she'd heard about it, Yolanda had fed the poor bastard to a sump crock. Some people weren't good with compliments. But still, the thought lingered. Until he remembered where he was, and that now was definitely not the time to be thinking about Yolanda bloody Catalyst. "Steady on, Cal," he muttered. "One problem at a time." The muties were still brawling. No one had started shooting yet, but it was only a matter of time. He spotted the girder he'd leapt from. He could just about reach it with his foot. He swung himself closer. If he could use it to boost himself, he might gain the momentum to swing to the other side. But as his boot touched the girder, a mutie turned. Eyes wide, the mutant gabbled something unintelligible and swung a crude billhook out trying to catch Cal's ankle. Cal shot him and swung backwards as the rest of the muties set up an ear-splitting caterwaul. "Backup would be nice," he shouted, hoping that someone might hear. "Anyone? No? Well, scav you both." As he swung back towards the gathering muties, he fired again, not bothering to aim. The cannibals were so densely packed that he couldn't fail to hit a few of them. But even as the wounded fell, the others pressed forwards, grabbing awkwardly for his legs or the edge of his coat. "Hands off the material! This is a prime off-world leather!" Cal snarled, as he lashed out with a boot and sent rotten teeth tumbling from a blistered mouth. He spun on his cable, swinging back out over the gap. The muties howled in frustration. Cal stretched out a foot, trying to hook a piece of broken pipe extending from the far side. He just missed it, and the motion sent him drifting back towards the muties. Another howl, this time of jubilation, stabbed at his ears. He spun in mid-air, his stomach lurching. "Shut up, shut up, shut up!" He fired his las pistol again and again. Slither back into your holes, because today isn't your day, sump scum. No one eats Cal Jericho. Leprous hands clawed at his trousers and he thrashed his feet. I said, back off! His grip on the conduit began to slip and he quickly holstered his weapon. He looked up, wondering if he could reach the top before the conduit gave way. Got to risk it. If the old plan doesn't work, come up with a new one. He started to haul himself up, but the muties weren't giving up so easily. He needed to get out of range of grabbing hands. He shifted his weight slightly and the conduit swung away once more, out of easy reach. A mutie held on a moment too long and was dragged along with Cal as he swung back towards the opposite end. The mutant wailed in panic, mouldering paws clutching desperately at Cal's legs. The creature was stick-thin and wrapped in filthy bandages and rags that might once have been a cheap hazard suit. A ragged cowl covered her head, but for a mouthful of splintered, yellowing fangs. Cal swatted at the mutant, trying to dislodge him. The conduit wouldn't hold both of them, not for long. The mutie snarled and jerked a knife from his rags. They spun in an awkward gavotte as Cal caught the mutant's bony wrist, narrowly preventing the knife from opening his belly. Dust and pollen sifted down from above as the rubber casing of the conduit began to stretch and tear. Cal looked up. Oh, scav me! The mutant twisted, trying to tear his hand loose from Cal's grip. Cal tried to get a boot up between them, but found that such contortions were useless without any sort of leverage. As they spun faster and faster, the mutant lunged, jaws wide. If he couldn't use his knife, he looked as if he was going to settle for getting a mouthful. Just before the jaws reached him, the mutant's head popped like a blister. He heard the shot that had killed his attacker a moment later. Cal wrenched the knife from the lifeless hand of the mutie a second before the body sagged and tumbled away. Someone was looking out for him after all. Not one to ignore opportunity's call, Cal began to shimmy up the conduit while the muties were still trying to figure out what had just happened. More shots pierced the gloom. He couldn't tell where they were coming from, and neither could the muties. Most...
Hey guys, I told y'all I was trying to make an RC powered Imperial Knight, right? I was gonna make tiny micro pneumatic cylinders, or yeah, just these cylinders. And what I found, I could not find these when I was looking for them, but now they're here. I'm like, I knew they existed, I just couldn't find them. So this looks like an old YouTube video, 16 years ago. Neat little thing. Alright. See if there's anything useful here. Ooh. Oh. Oh. Yeah, no thank you. And is this... It's a 40 millimeter. What is this? These are what I was trying to build. How does it look on the inside? Doesn't show me at all. Hmm. I guess they're not there, but these might work. They're small, they're cheap. So 50, a 75, and a 90. Well, dang. My problem is I need a lot of the same length that are small. You know, I just realized I have a guy in my Discord who works at a hydraulic factory. I can just ask him if they have micro hydraulics. Do these work? Yeah, it seems like not many people have bought it. Do these work? This is nice. I just need a bunch of little ones. These are pretty. Like, pretty, pretty. I like these more, though. Huh. Let me ask one of the guys in my Discord. Excuse me.
Scattered looking for cover. Some unlimbered antique weapons that even a corridor ganger would turn up his nose at and returned fire in all directions. But a few, with more hunger than sense, leapt for the conduit. It spun wildly as several of them caught it. One didn't and fell with a piteous wail. The others began to climb, their eyes fixed on Cal. Cal climbed faster, muscles straining against gravity's pull. Luckily, a cannibal's diet wasn't the best, and his pursuers weren't as fast as he'd feared. A few tense moments later, and he'd reached the thin framework of struts that stretched above the causeways. Despite a moment of vertigo, he managed to haul himself up off the conduit. He turned, rolled onto his stomach, and began sawing away with the mute's knife. It was hard going, but a bit of elbow grease and a hint of desperation was all it took to cut through the conduit sheath. The rubbers slid down the metal, and he had a moment to appreciate the look of horror on the closest mute's blistered features as she suddenly lost her grip on the conduit and plummeted downwards. Screams rose as Cal's pursuers fell away into the darkness. "Happy landings!" he called out and waved.
Hello?
The
Hey, Doc.
hmm,
So, I've been meaning to talk to you. I was gonna make some hydraulics,
mm-hmm.
and while I was looking around, I found some ones for RC cars.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, do you know anything about like these micro hydraulics?
Unfortunately, not nearly as much as I would like to. I have a RC shop that's just near me that sells all this shit that I have thought about playing with, especially the stuff that they have for their aircraft.
Well, uh,
But
the
I
reason,
just haven't done much.
yeah, the reason I asked you is because, don't you work at like a place that builds hydraulics?
I work at a place that makes grease.
That's it. Yeah, I knew it was like a component of it or something. I remember it was industrial,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, I'm looking into it because I'm also doing cosplay and considering putting parts of these kits into the cosplay, so you have mechanical like hands and arms and stuff.
Yeah.
Which I guess it's going more along the lines of a natural suit than a cosplay at this point.
I would, with hydraulics, you want to be extremely careful.
Yeah,
Um, Even the smallest little pinhole leak,
not good.
that's an understatement.
Yeah,
People have had hands removed because there was a pinhole leak on a hydraulic line and they got a fucking injection of hydraulic fluid so deep into them, the only option was to amputate.
Eugh. Um, can I
And
show you
that's,
my screen?
yeah, go ahead. I
Uh,
was just trying to say that that's like a common worry that they have.
yeah, I don't remember. There it is.
Okay, what the fuck? Why am I lagging so damn much?
What are you doing?
I just started up Monster Hunter.
Oh, I am live
I've got
streaming.
like 7 or 8 fucking seconds of lag.
That's not fun. Can you see my screen?
Hang on, I can't see anything with this fucking lag.
Yeah.
Just trying to fucking quit out of it, and it's going incredibly horrible.
Yeah. Would pneumatic cylinders work better?
I don't know if that was just the fucking connection I had to the server or what. Also, I can't see your... There we go.
These little 50 millimeter ones,
Mm-hmm.
like stuff like this is like I literally I've been looking for it, but I put the word micro in front of it, and they finally popped up on here.
Yeah.
And like I'm trying to find ones that are like only like 40 millimeters. Like something like this would looks like it looks pretty, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to see if there's any way I can make my own.
Again, it's possible. It's not usually advised for long-term use because I know certain hydraulic fluids can eat away at certain resins.
Which is why I was thinking about what if I just used air.
I mean, you're gonna have to design the system differently.
Yeah.
Not to mention the air will dry out any lube a lot faster that you put on the cylinder itself.
Yeah, unless you put like
No,
lubricant in the air.
air will dry out any lubricant you put on it, no matter what, a
Yeah.
lot faster. So you're gonna
Yeah.
have to maintain it and do a lot more maintenance on it than if you were to use a regular hydraulic system. However, you don't run the risk of, possibly lethal injections of fucking hydraulic fluid into your fucking body.
You see how tiny I'm wanting to go to, though, so it shouldn't need
Yeah.
that much pressure.
No, but it doesn't matter. It's one of those things where in a hydraulic system, to move anything, you have to build up pressure. And it doesn't take a lot of pressure to have serious injury happen.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, like I said, well, you know what I'm working on is the Imperial Knight,
Yeah.
but also I figured I could put these on hands and like shoulders, and have robotic arms. It's like these are pretty,
Yeah.
It's like the real pretty is like I just need. My issue is that on these things I need different attachments. I need them to have ball joints. But if I'm 3D printing it, I'm pretty sure I could 3D print a mount for that.
Yeah, and I mean, it shouldn't be all that difficult, but like I said, it requires a lot more consideration.
Yeah, and I just got done reading a book called Titan Death, and they go into how knights are made mobile, and they use steam and plasma instead of like hydraulics. They use plasma, which is the same principle. Just I look at these, I'm like, are these functional or are they like just decoration? Because I'm like, these are pretty, and I love the freaking copper and brass and look of them.
My issue though is using anything like AliExpress is just simply where it comes from and the fact that you have no guarantee of quality.
Yeah. Oh, these are literally what I was trying to have 3D print.
Again, I think you should be able to just fine. I'd just be careful of any load you're gonna put into them.
Yeah. Also, I found a 3D. I joined another group. Uh, I'm getting my Patreon going again,
Nice.
and we're gonna be doing more life-sized Warhammer suits and power armors and that. Uh, I was even considering talking to them to see if they want to do a Trench Crusader suit.
Could be interesting.
I have never bought anything from AliExpress, and just wanted to get your opinion on that as well.
I mean, AliExpress, it's possible to get good things from them. There's a reason they're cheap, though.
Yeah, like I spent $10 on 50 stepper motors. My problem is I'm trying to find bundles because these are like I only get 3 for $20. I need like 12. I was gonna ask, do you know anyone that has a that knows how to do CNC or run a lathe?
Possibly.
Because I was considering building my own, just because, uh, in concept they're simple.
Yeah.
Because I mean, this person from like 2009 made this little setup that lets you control back and forth. And I was going to see what their link to is this page. But I'm like, 76.99 EUR. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And they don't even have a
As stupid as
control.
it sounds, there's there's one place I go in town when I need like mechanical parts of like tiny amounts, and it's a surplus store. So like I never really know if I'm gonna be able to get exactly what I want. But like they haven't let me down really.
Well, I don't have anything like that around here.
No, I get it. I haven't ordered anything online, is what I was trying to say.
Oh, you get everything and actually go out and pick it up.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Uh, I was gonna ask, so is there any way you could help me out with this at all? This project?
I guess what are you looking for?
Uh, let's see. I'm trying to find. If I can't make my own hydraulics, I need to find micro hydraulics and a pump. Oh, basically, like this little thing that this guy has, where you're able to make it go back and forth.
Hmm.
But
I mean, I can try. My problem is more of what I've looked for is just like manually controlled shit.
yeah, I don't mind manually controlled stuff. I just need. I don't have anything. I literally have nothing, and I'm like, wait, these stuff already exist. Why am I spending all this time and effort into trying to 3D print it? But then, like you said, well, you don't have quality control.
Well, and like, yeah, that's the whole thing with like AliExpress is like, you're buying in bulk and you are buying from places that manufacture them as cheap as fucking possible and don't really give a shit if they all work or not.
Do you I see like this, like, are these colors or are these like lengths? What is this?
I'm trying to. It looks like those are colors.
Yeah. It's like, just like, yeah, you know, I've already told you what I'm working on, what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
Any ideas what I can search terms for these parts?
Not really, to be honest with you. Whenever I've done the hydraulic stuff, like I said, either it's going in person to look at the fucking surplus store, or I've been going after like regular hydraulic parts.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think micro would be the best fit for it, but like, I don't know.
Micro hydraulic RC.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I'm also kind of annoyed today. Uh, my taxes was supposed to come in Friday, and I get a thing in my mail saying that my taxes went to my student loans. But I got a thing in the mail saying my student loans are I don't have to pay them.
Yeah.
So it's like, where's my money, and why do I still owe money? Apparently.
Because it's the government. They never do anything right or efficiently.
Yeah. Just I was need that money.
I get it.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
why I try to make sure I only pay what I have to on my taxes.
and uh, where was I? Right. Trying to. I have to go into work tonight because this factory like screwed up. We're behind, so I basically have to go in and clean.
Fun.
So I don't get any days off this week. But it does mean I get like 16 hours of overtime if I have to go in tomorrow.
Well, hopefully that'll at least feel good on the paycheck.
Yeah, it's just not, you know, my trouble with my truck.